UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned the world is closer to nuclear annihilation than at any other time since the Cold War. He spoke at a UN conference on reducing the spread of nuclear weapons. The Non-Proliferation meeting was postponed for 2 years because of the pandemic.
The stakes are high as the month-long conference gets underway at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Russia put its nuclear forces on alert after it invaded Ukraine. The UN's chief said the threat posed by nuclear weapons today hasn't been seen since the Cold War. And he issued this warning.
We have been extraordinarily lucky so far, but luck is not a strategy, nor is it a shield from geopolitical tensions boiling over into nuclear conflict. Today, humanity is just one misunderstanding, one miscalculation away from nuclear annihilation. We need the Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons as much as ever.
Germany's foreign minister accused Russia of reckless rhetoric and reminded signatories of their obligations to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, or NPT.
We are here to defend the rules-based international order. The NPT is not just a piece of paper. It embodies some of the most fundamental commitments of humankind: to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons, to ensure nuclear weapons are never used again, and to work towards our common goal of a world free of nuclear weapons.
In a letter to delegates, Moscow said nuclear war should never be unleashed and there could be no winners. The treaty is the cornerstone of global efforts to stop the spread of nuclear weapons. Over the following weeks, participants will discuss a consensus on future steps. Japan is spearheading talks as the world's first and only country to be hit with atomic bombs. The push for agreement comes days ahead of the 77th anniversary of those nuclear attacks.
Well, DW's Michaela Kufner joins me from outside the United Nations in New York. So, Michaela, you've been listening to a range of high-level speeches there from these leaders today. What were the main takeaways?
Well, most of all, I was actually following the German foreign minister, and she also sat down with a group of leaders, the Stockholm group, who spearhead those efforts to really get a diplomacy going, to really mean non-proliferation when the world talks about it. And she pretty much concluded with a sentence saying, well, we're not here because it's easy, we're here because it's needed. And that was only emphasized through the speech we heard from Antonio Guterres. Very that this is not just about intent. This is not just about Vladimir Putin, who in the early days of the aggression against Ukraine also threatened the West of nuclear weapons potentially, but that the biggest risk was making mistakes, that mistakes could lead to the annihilation, essentially, of mankind. These are very big words, these are very big threats. And here there are some concrete talks to try and find ways to at least limit them if you can't stop them.
And what is the United Nations hoping will come out of this review of the Non-Proliferation Treaty?
Well, in plain words, to bring world leaders who have nuclear arms to their senses. And there's a lot of finger-pointing towards North Korea, towards Iran, where the German foreign minister called on Iran to basically take that deal that is on the table, the so-called Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA, and actually make this happen now, although there were some positive signals. And we've heard a fresh warning from Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, who expects yet another nuclear test by North Korea. So the hope is that, and there's a month of talks that will now be going on, to find ways to limit the spread of nuclear weapons and also to get some fresh commitments to limit the number of nuclear weapons, because the so-called START II agreement that runs out in 2026, that sounds, it feels a long time away, but these talks are always very lengthy and they're very important indeed for global security.
Okay, Michaela Kufner in New York. Thank you so much, Michaela.